микрофон выключен.
Да, у нас чуть-чуть поменялся порядок из-за того, что
понятно.
коллеги часть заболели. Вот, но я скажу.
Хорошо, договорились, все, спасибо.
Еще несколько минут подождем, пока наши коллеги подключатся.
Спасибо, что вызвали, а то я не в тот раз пошла. Понимаю, что Георгиевна начала говорить, но я не там.
Ну да, но всем интересно, потому что на самом деле очень интересные такие
Гулять
секции.
пойдем, да.
Так, Эльмира, слышно меня? А вы будете сами делиться презентацией или нам поделиться?
Я бы хотела сама попробовать, если...
Да, все, прекрасно. Вот, тогда, наверное, мы потихонечку начинаем. У нас немножко поменялся порядок. Вначале у нас будет презентация Юлии Ореховой, Натальи Непомнящих. Потом у нас предполагалась презентация Ирины Лебедевой, вот, но я ее не вижу. Если она подсоединится, соответственно, тогда будет. После этого у нас будет презентация Федора Басова, Анны Ивановой. Есть у нас докладчики. После этого у нас будет презентация Марины Воробьевой и Медины Гонсалеса Венисио Хавьера. Докладчик есть. И после этого у нас будет презентация Елены Поповой и Эльмиры Авторхановой. Так, ну, мне кажется, мы можем начать, если коллеги не возражают. И я надеюсь, вы не будете возражать, если мы будем вести нашу секцию на английском языке. Все владеют, я надеюсь, по правилам нашей конференции. Okay, dear colleagues, my name is Lyudmila Yegorova, and I'm privileged to chair this section now. So we have just a bit of changes in the order of presentations, but I hope that you will enjoy our discussion and we are not going to have any technical problems. Our moderator today is Valeria Baronova. She is here with us and will help us with everything. So usually the timing is typical 10 minutes for your report, and then you are welcome to ask and answer questions and give comments and everything. And I hope that our discussion will be fruitful and mutually beneficial. And we will start with the first presentation, and that is the presentation of the research done by Yulia Orехova and Natalia Nepomнящих, Linguistic Cultural Identity Detective, Intercultural British Identity, Detective Intercultural approach. Okay, British detective. Yes, I missed the most important, the key word here. Okay, Yulia, so you're welcome.
I hope you can hear me. And dear conference participants and the board, it's a pleasure to welcome you today. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Orehova Yulia, and I'm here to present the paper devoted to the linguistic cultural phenomenon, and I'm going to dwell upon the conducted research. I'm presenting to you the paper entitled Linguistic Cultural Identity of British Detective Intercultural Approach. The object of the study is a linguistic cultural identity British detective through intercultural approach. And the subject is the model of the linguistic cultural identity that is formed on the basis of the study of lexical units that characterize the identity as an intercultural communication marker of the UK through the paradigm suggested in the works of Gredkov Hofstadter. While the objective of this paper is to conduct a comprehensive intercultural analysis of the linguistic cultural identity British detective based on the works by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And the analysis of theoretical resources studied helped to define the phenomenon of linguistic cultural identity. It is a complex concept with its recognizable features that allows us to understand and characterize the main idea of a particular ethnic group in order to assist a structured research. And Olga Dmitrieva identifies some characteristics of the linguistic cultural identity that allows us to describe it in detail. And on this slide right now, you can see them. And the result of the study have suggested that this identity exists in the English-speaking world and it is popular nowadays. And the identity is a combination of typical Englishman features such as isolation, secrecy, and emotional coldness. However, this linguistic cultural identity has its own unique characteristics. And for example, he is not a police officer himself, while his everyday activities are closely related to searching some various information that can be useful for his investigations. And we study the linguistic cultural identity of British detective as an intercultural communication marker of the UK. And our article represents an advanced view on the linguistic cultural identity of British detective through the paradigm suggested in the works of Gret Hofstadter. And Hofstadter's cultural dimensions theory is a framework for cross-cultural communication developed by him and his team. And it shows the effects of a society's culture on the values of his members and how these values relate and correlate to behavior using a structure derived from the factor analysis. And on this slide, we can see them, those 6 dimensions. And as an example, right now we will consider individualism at power distance, as these 2 dimensions are quite representative. Let's start with individualism. As we see, at a score of 89, the UK is, in general, is among the highest of the individualistic cultures, and this is a degree of independence in a society. And the independence in the society which we can find among its members, that is very important. And the British, they are a highly private people. For example, children are taught from early age to think for themselves and to find out what their unique purpose in life is. And our linguistic cultural identity, the character of Sherlock Holmes, he is a man who can be hired for some extraordinary criminal cases by police officials, and he wants to achieve perfection in his professional field, as his nature can be described as pedantic and scrupulous. And obviously he has a small number of close people, as he is a secretive loner who believes that his work is the most important part of his life. And the second dimension we can talk right now as an example is power distance, that deals with the fact that all people in societies are not equal. So at 35, at 35 points, Britain sits in the lower ranking of all countries, and they believe that inequalities among people should be minimized. And this score at first seems to be incongruent with the well-established and historical British class system. And but they believe that people should not limit how far they can travel in life, and a sense of fair play drives a belief that people should be treated in some way as equals. And the identity of British detective seems to be free to share to share every thought he has, and he easily adapts. For him, it isn't important with whom he is talking right now, and all people are absolutely equal for him, and it doesn't matter whether the person he is talking right now is his own brother, a police officer, a townsman, or even a king. And on this slide, we can see we illustrate that the identity of British detective fits perfectly for 4 dimensions, while the 2 dimensions represents his personal unique characteristics that has made him well known all over the world and loved by many people. And as we remember, the character of Sherlock Holmes isn't a perfect detective with his unique features. And on this slide, we provide, we adaptate our information and data about the linguistic cultural identity under analysis, and we represent the 6 dimensions of British detective that can be used for further studies. And the results of the paper can be applied in comparative linguistics, intercultural communication studies, and linguopersonology. And to understand the difference of social cultural and linguistic cultural background of various people, this study can be used in a wide variety of forms. And to conclude, we have successfully studied the phenomenon of linguistic cultural identity as an intercultural communication marker of the UK, and the identity British detective is identified based on the works by Arthur Conan Doyle through its typical and individual characteristics that represent the UK language culture and communication culture. We also studied possible applications of the results of the work, and this brings us to the end of our today's presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Julia, thank you very much. And I just would like to ask you about, probably you have noticed some development of this concept in the 20th, 21st century, because Conan Doyle made this character quite a long time ago. What do you think?
Yes, actually, right now you're talking a little bit about my paper, my graduation paper, my project for the next year, and I'm going to study the differences. And when I did the research for today to present you, that's the only thing I'm always um, thinking and trying to analyze, and there would be numerous differences, and this would be quite interesting to study.
Yana Alexandrovna.
Okay, Julia, I have a question. So, you know, Hofstede dimensions represent the paradigm for the whole culture, yeah? And you consider an individual. I understand that it's linguistic, cultural identity or personality as you wish, yeah? But it's still an individual. How can you fit an individual into the cultural paradigm? So this is a question actually about your method.
Well, we use the approach when people actually our identity, linguistic cultural identity, obviously is just a person, but this person, this image, this identity, and in some way type, for many people it represents the whole nation, and they judge over the cultural differences over one person, and in this way it can be interesting to analyze it and view how different it can be. I mean, the nation itself and the way people try to understand it or see to see it.
I still can't get the method. I'm sorry. Probably I'm a little bit dumb in this, but the idea is that this is the cultural characteristics here, Hofstede dimensions, and we have an individual person who is a representative of his culture, but probably he is not a typical representative, or he is a typical. Is that what you seek to prove?
Yes, I'm just finding his unique characteristics and study how it affects the artists people view, and even it could be interesting to compare to our culture. And we just the method of analysis and comparative analysis.
Okay, so still, I'll stop. All right, thank you. But probably you should discuss it with your research advisors in a little bit more detail, or I don't know. Okay, let it be. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see one more question from Marina Yurievna.
Yes, thank you. Tell me, please, are you sure that it's the detective who is really culturally representative of Britain? Normally, when we read Conan Doyle, we see many, many times that the detective says to his kickside, Dr. Watson, Watson, you are a real British. So how can you prove that Sherlock Holmes is also a real British? Who said it?
Okay, yes. Thank you for your question. And yes, I see. It's quite interesting. Well, a year ago we did quite an enormous work to analyze this identity in detail, and not as a cultural identity or just to understand what is his natural personal characteristics, and we came up with the result that it is a representative of the culture. And I also find it actually very interesting your example with Dr. Watson, and in some way they seem to be very different, And also, at the same time, they find the language to communicate, and they understand each other. So I believe that it also can be interesting to analyze their correlations and their relations.
Well, let's return to a slide with Hofstede. Hofstede died in a very old age, a year ago.
Yeah.
Who did this data? What epoch? I don't know, 50s, 60s. Let's return to a slide with Hofstede. Cultural identity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So who and when did it? Is it really without changes? So we can speak about a British detective for how many centuries? There were British detectives in 16th century, we know them. They are the same. Who said that these data are relevant?
The Hofstede's research itself was done a while ago, but not that far. And it has his strong sides, as he had many people he worked with. They're just people from companies, and he did a good job. He did an excellent research over the national
He
culture.
studied detectives.
No, that's the most interesting part. He studied.
What are these numbers? 69, 89, what are these numbers?
This is his analysis of hundreds of office workers that, no, that's actually interesting, as they represent as their perfect representations of people who daily communicate with other nations, and they have this attitude to, and they have all the experience to understand the differences of their own culture through the experience of through their working experience in other cultures. And
what you said, but it's not a question. I put the question quite concrete. All numbers reflect what kind of person?
It reflects those numbers. They show us data about businessmen and the office workers.
So it's none of our business. We study British detective.
But those, yeah, I see your point. And those dimensions, they are highly popular, and they can be extremely useful to study the nation and its culture in general, because those people, they just actually British or whatever other nation they are, or they can be. So I believe this.
No questions, thank you. Excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other remarks or questions? Okay, Julia.
I just wanted to say that Julia should really be very careful with the method and, let's say, correctness of its application. Yeah? Material method. So that's probably what I agree with Marina Yurievna in. Yeah? That either you can't present it properly, or there is something wrong with the approach. Right?
Yes, I would say that, yes, there should be some logic in applying some statistical methods, some figures, which cannot be applied to your particular subject or object of research, right? So, but I hope you've got a year ahead, so you will solve all that without any difficulties, because I've known Julia for several years, so she's very good researcher, so she can dig deeper. Actually, okay. So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Yulia, very much for a very interesting report, and I wish you all the very best with deep research, right? And now we are moving forward, and let's move on to the next presentation by Anna Ivanova and Fyodor. I don't see him here, Basov. Anna, are you ready to present your research now or maybe a bit later?
Да, я буду ждать Федора, потому что часть презентации рассказывает он, и мы тогда чуть-чуть позже, тогда через одного, да?
Okay, no problem. So now we are moving on to the next. Then it is Marina Igorevna Воробьева.
Здравствуйте, hello everyone. Just a second, I'm going to show my screen and share presentation.
И показ слайдов. Okay, perfect.
Perfect, thank you. Our research topic was on forms of verbal politeness in conversational Ecuadorian and Peninsular Spanish. My other presenter, who is Javier Gonzalez, he's not present with us today. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, so I would have to cover his part as well. Hispanic world or Hispanic culture, we see it as a holistic culture, and the reason is that the word itself, Hispanic, it refers to cultures and nations with a historical link to Spain and the Spanish language, and to the Spanish-speaking nations of, especially when it's applied, who were colonized by Spain, and particularly the countries of Latin America. So for us, Hispanic word means everything. It means culture from European Spanish people and, of course, Latin American. So what we observed, it's a communication and pragmatic failure between Latin American Spanish people and European Spanish people. And we think it's due to geographical location, Ecuador in Latin America, and European Spain, Castilian Spanish that they use. So the research objective was to adapt a reflexive pragmatic approach with different politeness strategies that would allow us to recognize verbal communicative situation of a given language community. In our case, we were researching Ecuador and Spain. Methodology. It was conducted a systematic literature review with a qualitative approach. And we were looking at pragmatically how we approach to each other. And we were looking at the strategies and knowledge of the differences in structural elements of Spanish language, and what it calls its national varieties, or national varieties in sociolinguistics. Also, they call it language varieties, and other word that they use, it's LECT. It's a general term for any distinctive, actually, form of language or linguistic expression. And linguists commonly use language variety or simply variety as a cover term for any of the overlapping subcategories of a language. And we were closely looking at certain communicative pragmatic situations and how to approach them. So it took us back to politeness theory of American sociolinguists, of Brown and Levinson, and where they extended the notion of Goffman's positive and negative phase. The book was published in 1987, but as I said, they extended notion of Goffman's notion of positive politeness. So we look at positive politeness, which entails the expression of solidarity, and positive politeness in Spanish language. And we gave here, of course, some examples in Spanish and in English due to presentation because the paper is in Spanish. So we have to make some readjustments here. I won the gold medal on the piano recital. Congrats. Whoa, the gold medal. So here definitely we can see a positive face, a positive politeness. Maybe exaggerating interest even here, but it depends on which culture do we look at and we're talking about it. So for some cultures, they will see it as exaggerating interest. Negative politeness. Negative politeness entails the expression of solidarity and the recognition of the other with the following strategies and particularly request by using indirect discourse. So here's how it's Spanish. Si no es mucha molestia, me puedes prestar el libro. If it's not too much trouble, can I borrow the book? ¿Podría usted cerrar la ventana para que no entre frío? Could you close the window to keep out the cold? So here is a negative politeness because request by using indirectly asking a partner to do something. And then we looked closely at pragmatic formulas, structures, and we started with pragmalinguistics. And what is very common for Latin American culture, and especially for Ecuadorian, is diminutive suffix ito, ita. Yes, in Spain, this suffix exists as well. However, it completely has a different meaning. In Ecuador, if we say mijito, amorcito, Carlita, Juanito, in all those words, you can see the suffix ita or ito. And it really tells you my little son, my love. And here's with diminutives, Carlita, Juanito. So in Spain, it is not used this way, not pragmatically. Linguistically, it will use it, it exists, but they don't have, I'm sorry, oh no, sorry. But they do not have the same meaning as it has in Ecuador. Another, we looked at informalists, and we took a very common formula, no sea malito, which is in Latin American Spanish. Literally translation in English into English will be don't be bad boy. Carries an implicature, be good and do what I ask you to do. Now, in Ecuador, if you use that implicature, no sea malito, so not to perform the act requested by speaker would imply be bad and you have to do it. Well, there is no pragmatic context and could not be done a pragmatic transfer from Latin American Spanish to Castilian Spanish or European Spanish. Here we give more details that it applied. During our research, we found one more other interesting thing, which brought us to analyze something else. And when linguistically we were analyzing those suffixes, ito, ita, we noticed that the creation of this suffix, because you can say this phrase without using this suffix, no ser malo. In Latin American Spanish, it could have three meanings. It shows a relative power, social distance, and degree of imposition with a special voice tone, because when you say it, you have to use a special voice tone, which also tells you about the pragmatic difference on that. So it leads us from pragmalinguistics, it leads us to socio-pragmatic level. We looked at usted, means you, and it's rather formal way. It's like in Russian, it's the same, like ты, вы. So in Spanish, in English, of course, we don't have, but it's the same thing in Spanish. So instead, it's equals in Russian, вы, or in English, of course, it's you with respect. And in Spain, it's not very common to use that usted. They use it only to establish a respect and for a certain socio-category of a people. In Ecuador, usted is used to respect, but it's very, very common, especially for older people and sociocultural status. We would have to use usted. We looked also at sociopragmatic level, and we looked at extra linguistic factors as paradigmatics. In Spain, very important physical contact. Ecuador, the same. That thing we found the same. 3 types of greetings exist in both countries, and there are 2 kisses, a handshake, and a hug. But the difference is that in Spain, kisses, they have to be silent. When you greet a person, you always kiss a person, but they have to be silent. Whether in Ecuador, they do not have to be silent. Results and conclusions. So greetings awareness of sociopragmatics changes and awareness of pragmalinguistic changes, and the importance of reflexivity, maintaining conversation according to language community standards, and that's what we're looking at our paper. React appropriately, and that brings us back to reflexivity. Nonverbal conversation is a process of transmitting meaning with extra linguistic factors. So results and conclusion, verbal, nonverbal communication and rules of conduct as a part of Hispanic culture. We need to accept those rules and to follow them. Continental pragmatic differences are established by society. We cannot deny them. We have to accept them. Awareness of sociocultural rules and national cultural Hispanic culture and their territorial differences. We have to be aware of that. And finally, the very last thing, it's introduction. The challenging part is teaching those differences. Introduction of basic language, national varieties that I was talking earlier about, dialects, into the teaching process with pragmatic and reflexive approach. And that's how we offer to approach it in methodology. So with the current study of politeness forms of the Spanish language in Ecuador and Spain, we are contributing to make visible the expressiveness of Spanish American speakers. And in addition, we have presented the contribution to the reflexive pragmatic analysis of these forms to the validity of the Spanish language. We hope that it helps the students and brings awareness to Spanish speaking from Latin America and from European Spanish. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. It's really quite surprising results, actually. And do people speaking Spanish as their native language know of these differences? Are they aware of the different roles of some linguistic patterns in different territorial variants of Spanish?
Thank you for your question. A very interesting question, Ludmila Alexeyevna. And for 30 years living in California, I have never thought that I would ever talk about differences in Hispanic world. Never, ever. But it brought me because not being in Europe for a very long time, for over 20 years, I noticed them right away. Right away in the first moment of migrating with native speakers. And the first approach was actually the first, I remember the first ones who I was greeting, they were in front of American Embassy. There is the Institute of Cervantes. And the colleagues were there because I asked them to stay at their lessons and to compare lessons with the way they're taught in States. So they were gladly and they accepted because they were coming to the lessons in American Embassy. So we had that exchange. And I was surprised because lots of things that I have to figure out. And I would say they used to because they have already some of the native speakers from Latin America in Institute of Cervantes, which I was surprised to as well, actually. So they had this awareness more than I had. And that just, it bugged me so much that I decided to explore it. And every time I read a lot, I compare it. Luckily, when in my teenage years, I studied in Spain. So I'm used to Spanish, Castilian Spanish, and I can conjugate the words, the verbs, and how they do it. But going back to States, nobody does this way. And it's basically, I can't say you forget it, but you just don't apply it. Mm-hmm. And when it brings back, when I come back, it brings back all these differences. And even my other Latin American friends, they would say, "You speak differently? Why did you use that word? Why did you conjugate it this way?" I thought, well, because I teach students now, so I have to do it differently too. So yeah, no, if we're talking about Latin America, we're not aware of those differences a lot, just phonetically, mm-hmm. but not really going into researching, not in grammar, not no, phonetically. The only, I would say, on the phonetical level where and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And what do you think of the modern trends? Are these differences becoming bigger currently?
Because of globalization.
Or more uniform? Mm-hmm. So with globalization or what?
I would say we start to understand more looking at the articles and literature that lately we were reading, and we understand more, let's say, vocabulary words and some grammar rules. We still can't explain why we say this way or that way. We are aware more, but we still do not use it. So I would say there is still a very, especially transferring pragmatics. I feel it's impossible. I don't know if it's ever will be done, but we did not transfer certain meaning of the words to one culture, Hispanic culture, but we don't do it from one continent to another one. We're aware of it and we just don't use them. We can listen how other person would use it, but we will not apply it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Any other questions, dear colleagues? Okay, Marina Igorevna, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, everyone.
Interesting research. Thank you. And now we are ready to proceed to the presentation by Fyodor Basov and Anna Ivanova. Complex identity in autonomous regions in Europe. So quite a different topic. Okay, you are welcome.
Могу я вас попросить открыть все-таки ту презентацию, которую Федор прислал?
Валерия, сможете?
Куда он? Не вижу, куда он прислал. Смотрю, ничего нет у меня. Когда он прислал?
Федор, мне кажется, у тебя выключен микрофон.
С какой почты, ну, хотя бы, может сказать, потому что все, что было, Как?
Фабасов. Фабасов. Федор, тебя не слышно.
Нет.
Федор, скажи, пожалуйста, что-нибудь. Мы тебя не слышим.
У меня есть от него письмо, но без приложенного файла указано: пожалуйста, простите, что только сейчас направляю вам нашу презентацию. К сожалению, очень мало визуализации, она состоит только из 2 слайдов и ничего не приложено.
Хорошо. Так, тогда я, наверное, начну только...
Вы можете мне отправить, я делаю слайды здесь без проблем. Можно в чат.
Сейчас, одну секунду. Вы не могли бы еще раз почту назвать, на которую...
Воbaronova, Gmail, там что, .com.
Да, есть. Отправила.
Угу, секундочку.
Есть?
Открыла демонстрацию экрана. Скажите, пожалуйста, видите?
Нет.
Ну, у меня написано, как будто Людмила Алексеевна идет демонстрация.
Да, видна демонстрация экрана с телефона. Да, вот так вот, хорошо, вот, все, прекрасно. Останавливаемся здесь. Угу.
Так, хорошо. Я попрошу сейчас Федора, пока я начинаю, все-таки исправить звук. Итак, тема нашего совместного исследования посвящена вопросу сложной идентичности. Это означает, что население того или иного региона имеет несколько идентичностей, то есть склонно к определению себя как одновременно к нескольким культурам одновременно. Так вот, мы начнем с Аландских островов и Южного Тироля. Конфликты вокруг Аландских островов и Южного Тироля прошли наиболее острые фазы еще до создания Европейского Союза, но принято считать, что именно они послужили как проевропейский фактор, то есть фактор, который был проинтеграционный. В Южном Тироле и на Аландских островах имеет место языковая общность не с собственным государством, а с государством-соседом. То есть это также является причиной того, что проявление европейской и наднациональной идентичности в этих регионах выше, чем в среднем по стране. Также в этих автономиях, выше уровень региональной идентичности, чем в других регионах страны. Аландские острова, если мы сейчас перейдем непосредственно к ним, вот они изображены, я не знаю, видно, не знаю, всем ли видно?
Да, видно хорошо.
Хорошо, то есть это регион в составе Финляндии, имеющий особый уровень автономии. Поэтому Финляндию можно считать сложным унитарным государством. То есть таким государством отдельные территориальные единицы, которого имеют общий уровень автономии, больше уровня автономии, чем другие. Отношения между столицей региона Маринхам и Хельсинки можно охарактеризовать как вертикальные, двусторонние. То есть почти как отношения между двумя суверенными государствами, но это будет очень такое грубо сказано, но в целом они достаточно, то есть уровень автономии достаточно высокий. И дополнительно данное наблюдение подчеркивается тем фактом, что Аландские острова создали мощные и почти государственные ассоциации для своей автономии, то есть ассоциации в абстрактном смысле этого слова, то есть через флаг, гимн, национальные праздники, даже интернет-домен, автомобильные номера. Аландские острова населены преимущественно шведскоязычным населением, финскими шведами. Финские шведы составляют приблизительно 5% населения Финляндии. Их родным языком, разумеется, является шведский. В Финляндии при этом два официальных языка – финский и шведский. Есть также двуязычные муниципалитеты и коммуны. Но Аландские острова имеют уникальный статус моноязычной шведской автономии в Финляндии, а также демилитаризованной зоны. То есть их население не призывается в вооруженные силы. И 91% аланцев родным языком своим считает шведский. И лишь 5% жителей архипелага, собственно, финский. То есть считают родным языком финский. Чтобы там можно... В 1999 году я вспомню одно исследование журнала «Радар». Он провел исследование, в котором участвовали 427 респондентов, собственно, жителей архипелага. Самым популярным вариантом идентичности стала аландская, а на втором месте северная, то есть северные страны в целом. Над национальной идентичностью за ними следовала финляндская и финско-шведская. То есть это и есть показатель вот этой комплексности идентичности, которая присутствует у населения островов. В 2008 году состоялось другое исследование, но показало, что аланцы высоко ценят свою именно аландскую идентичность вне зависимости от того, на каком языке они говорят дома, на финском или шведском. То есть это не имеет значения. В этом регионе региональная и наднациональная идентичности получаются сильнее, чем национальная идентичность. Также, что здесь следует отметить, приведем исследование Окермарка. Этот автор резюмирует идентичность Аландских островов как амбивалентную, то есть цитата, между шведскостью, финскостью, западностью и восточностью, между материком и архипелагом, фермерами и торговцами. Собственно, в этом он видит эту амбивалентность, как и у нее есть также и сильные, и слабые стороны, и в конечном итоге автор находит определенные преимущества такого положения вещей. Также была известная журналистка Нина Фелман, которая задала вопрос о том, могут ли аланды вместо выбора нескольких внешне генерируемых характеристик идентичности сознательно предпочесть вариант промежуточной земли в кавычках, в соответствии с которой архипелаг определил бы себя как объект со своими собственными законами, независимыми от общих внешних категорий. И в этом смысле идентичность Аландских островов не может быть описана ни как шведская, ни как шведско-финская, ни даже как финская, что опять же показывает вот эту особенность многоярусный, да, и не только амбивалентный, то есть получается у нас много, ну, скажем, векторов этой идентичности, куда она направлена. Далее Южный Тироль. Южный Тироль схожи, но все-таки немного отличны, ну, скажем, скорее схожи в данном случае ситуации. Мы их объединили как две схожих. Потом Федор расскажет еще.
Слышно?
Да, тебя слышно, спасибо, Федор. Да. Федор расскажет еще две отличных кейса, если можно говорить это слово сегодня. Итак, Южный Тироль. Напомню, что это автономная провинция, входящая в состав итальянского автономного региона Тертино-Южный Тироль. Но по данным переписи населения немецкий язык является родным только то есть немецкий язык является родным для 70% жителей, а итальянский только для 25%. То есть более половины южнотирольцев предпочли бы иметь помимо итальянского еще и австрийское гражданство. И в Южно-Тирольском Ландтаге доминирует Южно-Тирольская народная партия. Она тоже является проевропейской, как я указывала выше. И учитывая результат последних выборов в Европейский парламент в Италии, в Южном Тироле Южно-Тирольская народная партия она в целом достаточно активно поддерживается до сих пор. И из этого мы делаем вывод, что ценности, которые пропагандирует эта партия, косвенно относятся к тем ценностям, которые разделяет большая часть населения. Из этого мы делаем вывод о том, что о как раз этой комплексности идентичности. И я очень коротко про Южный Тироль, так как сейчас хотелось бы еще оставить время на два остальных кейса, про которые расскажет Федор Пасов.
Да, коллеги, большое спасибо за возможность выступить. Извините за серьезные технические неполадки у меня. Да, мы представляем вам часть только начинающегося исследования о взаимовлиянии конфликтов идентичности и внешней политики. И да, здесь речь идет о многоуровневой, сложной идентичности, региональной, национальной и наднациональной, а также, как Анна говорит, о том, что ее два кейса, Оланда и Южный Тироль, это конфликты особого типа, которые представляют собой как бы стратегическую связь между соседними государствами, Финляндией и Швецией, да, с одной, в случае Оландов, и Австрии и Италии. А вот что касается двух других кейсов, датских кейсов, они, и, соответственно, да, как сказала Анна, у населения Аландских островов и Тироля выше наднациональная, северная и европейская идентичность. Что касается датских кейсов, Гренландии и Фарерских островов, здесь наоборот, идентичность тоже связана с языком, но она направлена не на соседние страны, а она автохтонно направлена внутрь, и поэтому региональная идентичность, да, выше, но национальная идентичность и наднациональная, то есть европейская идентичность, она ниже, и это проявляется в том, что, несмотря на то, что Дания входит в состав Евросоюза, но Фареры не вошли в состав европейских сообществ, а Гренландия, получив автономию, вышла из состава европейских сообществ, и как раз это создает феномен вот особых территорий в Европейском Союзе. И как видно на втором слайде, это также влияет на вообще европейскую политику Дании, поскольку Дания единственная страна сейчас, которая из стран-членов ЕС, которая не участвует в европейской политике безопасности, общей политике безопасности и обороны, а также и не входит в еврозону и не обязана к ней присоединиться. Вот, и все эти кейсы про идентичности, они связаны и с языком, и культурой, а также, вот как Анна привела пример Аландских островов, с элементами гражданской идентичности. Вот мы рассматриваем концепт гражданской идентичности, который также проявляется в политических институтах, вот как Анна сказала, Южно-Тирольской народной партии, и собственно, парламентаризме, отдельных политических структурах, органах, и как касается это Аландских островов, то есть северных автономий Аландов, Фарер и Гренландии, это статус независимого участника Северного Совета наравне с национальными государствами. Вот. Так что, да, мы попытались показать, и вот постараемся в расширенном исследовании показать, как идентичность влияет на курс стран в отношении европейской интеграции и в отношении стран-соседей. Спасибо большое, коллеги. И извините еще раз за сумбур.
Спасибо большое. Очень интересный доклад. Мы узнали достаточно много. Вот я, например, о том, о чем я даже не представляла, что существует. Какие-то вопросы, коллеги? У меня вопрос. Скажите, пожалуйста, как-то повлияла ситуация с коронавирусом на восприятие жителей вот, себя как чего-то особенного, отдельного от других территорий?
Спасибо большое. Но что касается датских автономий, то да, там сепаратистские тенденции усилились, но это можно отследить по опросам, регулярным опросам по поддержке вот, региональных партий. Вот. Что касается Южного Тироля, здесь просто есть данные, что в этой провинции уровень, да, процент заражений и новых случаев вот этого индекса ниже, чем в среднем по Италии. Вот. И как это сказывается, сложно сказать, но вот такая информация есть.
Ну, они, в принципе, поддерживают политику правительства там, по локдауну, по выходу и так далее? Или они говорят, нет, мы вот делаем так, как нам нужно? Вот местные власти. И как это происходит? Тем более там какие-то островные территории. Да.
Ну, вот, да, что касается Аландских островов, несмотря на такую да, связь историческую и языковую со Швецией, в общем, как кажется, население Аландов с большой опаской относится к шведской модели да, поведения и в отношении карантина, антиковидных мер, и, в общем, с пониманием относится к тому, что впервые с вот, 40-х годов для шведов нельзя беспрепятственно въехать в Финляндию. Вот, то есть здесь они в данном случае разумными считают меры финского правительства.
Вот, спасибо большое. Еще какие-то вопросы?
Спасибо большое.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we are ready to proceed to our next presentation, phonetic adaptation of Japanese vocabulary into English language. So the research has been done by Елена Попова and Elmira Aftarkhanova. Elmira, are you ready to share the screen with the presentation?
Yeah, just a minute, please.
Bit larger the size.
I'm very sorry. I'm just trying to make it full screen.
Okay, I may share the screen if you like.
Oh.
It's okay. It's okay now.
Thank you for the opportunity to present my research and my course paper. The name of my research is Phonetic Adaptation of Japanese Vocabulary in the English Language. This object of my research is borrowed words. The subject is adaptation of Japanese vocabulary in the English language, and the aim is to research phonetic adaptation of Japanese vocabulary and how it assimilates in the English language. Nowadays, there are a huge number of languages in the world, and to some extent, they all influence each other. Relations between countries are increasing every day, and in this regard, it becomes necessary to introduce new concepts and phenomena into the vocabulary of the language. English as an intermediary language in the international arena has become an integral part of the life of the entire society. A knowledge of words of foreign origin will help people learning English to freely contact with the culture of another country. Borrowed words are words adopted by the speakers of one language from another language. Borrowed words can also be called a loan word. Borrowing words from the vocabulary of another language is not uncommon in the modern world, since most countries are somehow connected with each other by economic, diplomatic, or other type of cooperation. In this slide, you can see examples of Japanese loan words such as karaoke, kamikaze, sushi, origami, and anime. Borrowed words, Japanese borrowed words account for approximately 0.2% of all loan words in English. However, the number of Eastern loan words recorded in English dictionaries is quite small. The process of integration of Japanese vocabulary occurs intensively, and the number in the English language also increases due to numerous factors of interaction of cultures. The main reason for borrowing words are the close cooperation between the two countries. Because of this, there is a borrowing of the vocabulary of one language by another, or also mutual borrowing. The reason for this phenomenon are diverse, but the same for all languages. Among them are intra-linguistic and extra-linguistics. Intra-linguistic ones include the following. First of all, the need to name an object or phenomenon due to the absence of the designated phenomenon in the vocabulary of another language. The second one is the need to name an object or phenomenon due to the inaccuracy of the existing name. If there are native and foreign words with a similar meaning, the English words has more general meaning, and the borrowed words has both a general meaning and additional shades. And the extra linguistic reasons, such as social psychological expression of connotations that corresponding unit doesn't possess in the receiving language, and the intensification of international relations, the process of globalization, which causes the appearance of a large number of internationalism, words of one language borrowed by many languages of the world. Borrowings are classified according to which aspect of the word is new to the receiving language. According to this principle, borrowings are divided into phonetic, translation loans, semantic, and borrowing of words forming elements. The first of these types, for example, phonetic borrowings, is the main and most numerous group. They are characterized by the fact that the original sound complex is new for the borrowing language, although each of the constituent sounds, with a rare exception, is replaced by the sound of the language in which they are integrated to. Also, the borrowed words can be classified according to the sphere where they were taken from. For example, arts, business, sports, clothing, politics, and etc. In this slide, you can see examples of borrowed words from the field of arts. And in the first picture, you can see kabuki, which is a traditional Japanese theater. And the second picture is ikebana, which means the art of flower arrangement. After entering the language, borrowing undergoes a process of assimilation, the adaptation of the word to a different language system, which is expressed in a change in pronunciation, spelling of the word, changing its grammatical properties in accordance with the rules of the receiving language, and often in a change in semantics. It is usually not difficult to identify borrowed elements in the language, especially if the word has not yet had time to assimilate. However, in some cases, it is very difficult to do this. For borrowing at other language levels, we have to rely mainly on the individual sense of language, the typical nature of certain structure. Phonetic assimilation implies any change in the sound and accent structure of a word due to some peculiarities, including the rare use of Asian borrowed words in British everyday culture and the significant genetic difference between English and Eastern languages. The borrowings were only partially modified phonetically. The absence of such modifications is shown in the fact that the word retains foreign language phonemes, foreign language sound combinations, non-traditional phoneme positions, for example, E at the end of a syllable, in words such as kake, which means berry, lack of reduction of unstressed vowels in a word bushido, which means ethic of the samurai, and combinatorial pronunciation of vowels. For example, in a word ama, which means female diver. And the last one is two variants of pronunciation foreign words. For example, kabuki. In the first variant, it pronounced as kabuki, and in the second one is pronounced kabuki. In the first variant, we can observe the consolidation of the main stress on a second syllable and the reduction of the unstressed vowel. And in the second variant, the stress on each syllable is preserved according to the rules of the original language. The phenomenon of borrowing has a great impact on the language, causing serious changes in it. As a result of this process, foreign elements appear in the language as words and part of words. Often there are words hybrids, which is words where one part of a word is borrowed and the other part originally exists in this language. One of the results is the emergence of a large number of doublets, words of identical origin having different phonemic structure and meaning, since they were borrowed from different sources or in different historical periods, or are the results of a special development of the word in the language. Secondary borrowing is another result of this process. In this case, along with the previously borrowed and assimilated word, a new word appears in the language, which consists in form with the previously borrowed one, but has different meaning up to homonymy. Thank you for your attention, or how would a Japanese person say, "Goseichou arigatou gozaimashita."
Thank you very much. It's very interesting to hear about the borrowings from distant languages, right, which are quite different. Do you think these borrowings will be fully assimilated sometime or not?
Maybe it can be because Japan is a very fast growing and fast developing country, and a lot of other countries communicate with it. So maybe Japanese words some would be fully assimilated in languages.
Okay, Marina Yurievna.
My first question is, because I have two of them, do you know somebody but you working on this topic?
I'm sorry, can you repeat, please?
Name somebody who did the same work. English authors, American authors, Russian authors, who work with Japanese borrowings?
I can't say it right now because all the authors are written down on my course paper and I don't remember them by heart.
No one. Okay.
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so I cannot understand how you did work. You found all these examples by yourself?
Yes, of course.
Why, of course? You must read other authors, of course.
I read, but I don't remember the names because I written down the names.
Well, you have discovered. Have you discovered any word by yourself, a new Japanese word, if we do not take the list that everybody knows? Perhaps there is something new, some new word entered in English.
No, I didn't discover.
You didn't. Okay. Thank you. So have no. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Mira, try to be more attentive to the basis, right, of your work, and other researchers' works are your basis. So you should remember them at least, right? Okay.
Thank you.
And then try to identify what you do and what other people do, right? Other researchers do, and you should understand and prove that your part of the job is quite good, right, and valuable. Okay, thank you. Anyway, it is just the beginning because it is just a second-year student. So, and I wish you all the very best with quite a complicated topic, right?
Людмила Алексеевна, я по-русски, если можно. Аня, я автор теории ассимиляции заимствований и очень близко к вам работаю. А именно, я исследую русские слова во французском, английском и итальянском языках. Их тоже очень мало, чуть-чуть больше, чем японских, конечно. Но у меня получилась такая интересная теория. Вот она как-то должна лечь, вы можете ее найти, она в открытом доступе. Ваш руководитель вам покажет, как искать в e-library. Но вот вся суть. Вот вы сейчас, когда их подавали, я не увидела ни одного слова, которое было бы с переносным смыслом. Вот то, что вы давали, это просто наименование каких-то понятий Японии. А, например, икебана по-русски, я вот не знаю, как по-английски это надо смотреть, у нас употребляется в метафорическом смысле. Вот когда так начинает работать слово, оно действительно ассимилировано. Когда мы первый раз встречаем слово, когда человек, впервые встречающий что-то японское, употребляет японское слово в своем письме, подписи под картинкой и так далее, это называется ксенизм. Потом мы допираем, что понятия-то общие, и тогда мы делаем не вот такое заимствование, как транслитерация, транскрипция, а мы как бы перефразируем это. Тогда русская изба будет всего лишь домом крестьянским, а вот у вас там какие-нибудь будут, соответственно, театр не кабуки, а там театр такой-то и такой-то. Третья стадия – это совершенно особенная вещь, о чем вы сейчас говорили. Когда мы начинаем перековеркивать, конечно, слова, потому что плохо слышим фонемы чужого языка, но начинаем как бы их уже устраивать в своем языке. Вы правильно сказали, что они приобретают другие грамматические характеристики. Четвертая стадия – это уже попадание в словарь. Вот тут, если это слово попало в английский, там, ну, любой оксфордский словарь, да, это слово принято сообществом лингвистов, и они разрабатывают его значение. А вот пятая форма, это самое интересное, пятая стадия, это когда мы, люди английского языка, используем японские слова в нашем разговоре между собой, не касающемся Японии. Вот наша икебана – это яркий пример такого дела, потому что «сделай ему икебану» – это насмешливое разговорное слово, это «накажи его как следует». Вот если вы найдете такие изменения, такие употребления, вы получите жизнь японских слов в английском языке. Спасибо большое за внимание.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. Hope our students will benefit from your remarks. Any other remarks and questions? Okay, dear colleagues, thank you very much for a very fruitful and mutually beneficial discussion. So hope you liked it. Because we had the chance just to meet each other and discuss absolutely different topics, but all of them are quite captivating. And I wish you all the very best and hope to meet you sometime in person at the Institute of Foreign Languages. You are always welcome, you know this. Thank you very much. So I suppose that you may finalize the section. We will stop.
Очень интересная дискуссия. Большое спасибо за приглашение. Замечательный стол.
Спасибо большое.
Спасибо большое. До свидания.
Спасибо. До свидания.
Всего доброго.
Всего хорошего.